Hi. I'm interested in, and I'm fascinated by, and I'm passionate about diasporas. Now, I have to start with an admission. When I started in this world, I didn't know what the word meant. I thought diaspora was something you took two of with a headache. I had no idea of the exact meaning of the word. And then when I looked into it, it was actually got Greek origins. It's two Greek words, dia meaning over and spiro meaning scattering. And it was first used by the reference to the exile of the Jews from Babylon in the 5th century. And traditionally throughout history has been associated with the Jews and with Israel. But over the recent years, it's gone mainstream. And every country now talks about its diaspora. In fact, the Migration Policy Institute in Washington says there's 450 government institutions in over 55 countries who are engaged with diaspora. And you know, the numbers are pretty impressive. In 1990, there was 150 million people living in a country other than the one they were born in. But now, that number is 240 million people. If it were a country, it would be the 5th largest country in the world. There's 80 million Europeans live outside the country they were born in. And migration has become this phenomenon. I think migration was this great centrifugal force distributing and dispersing people all around the world. And diaspora is this kind of interesting convergent force, which is bringing people back. Now, in my country, Ireland, 10 million people have emigrated from Ireland. So we have this enormous diaspora of 70 million people around the world. And we regard them not as lost actors, but as a terrific national asset. And when you look at the contribution diasporas have made just in remittances alone, $560 billion last year sent home to home countries by people in their diaspora. It is an enormous contribution. It is a form, if you like, of soft power. And this was a concept that Professor Joseph Nye of Harvard University championed in his book, Soft Power. Hard power is economic and military conflict, but soft power is the ability to get the outcomes that you want through attraction rather than coercion. And diasporas are a perfect example of soft power. This is a connected world like never before. The measurement of power in this world is connectedness. The information age is over. Everything is available to everybody at the click of a switch. Now we're in this networked world. And in this network world, you have to build your global connections. And it's not even about countries anymore. It's about cities and regions. The world is about connected clusters of creative people, all hanging around and spending time together. That's the world that we're in. The Economist nailed this some time ago when they had it on their front cover. The magic of diasporas. How migrant business networks are changing the world. The one bright spark in the world economy, they called it. And migrants are extraordinary starters of businesses. In the United States, you have companies like Google and eBay and Intel started by migrants. You now have migrants in the C-level positions of an enormous array of companies. Companies like Coca-Cola or Pepsi or Dow Chemicals are run by migrants. And they're connecting back to their country of origin. In fact, just recently, the new CEO of Microsoft was an Indian, born and educated, but had moved to the United States. So we have this extraordinary influence of power of migrants in the world. As I traveled around the world, I lived and worked in 6 countries. I asked myself 4 really big questions. And the questions were, what helped China become this massive manufacturing power? What helped India become a global technology hub? What helped Israel become the great startup nation of the world? And then in our case, what helped bring peace to Northern Ireland? And the answer is the same, networking their diasporas. So there's that word diaspora again. But I'm interested in that word networking because I think networking and global networking with diasporas is critically important. And when you talk to people, they always agree with you. And when you experience and see how people make progress, they network their way to success. You can't, in this life, do it alone. Opportunities don't float around on clouds. They're attached to people. But here's what's curious. Companies have strategies for advertising, marketing, PR, finance, but they don't have strategies for networking. Schools and colleges and business schools don't teach networking. So why is that? And the answer is, well, I don't know the answer. But if any of you know the answer, ping me on LinkedIn and let me know, because I just don't know why that is the case, despite the fact it is so important. Maybe it's because networking's got a kind of a sleazy image. We imagine this slightly obsequious person making noise and distributing business cards at a furious rate, a very strong sales kind of dimension. I think you know the type. You wake up in the morning and you find their business card in the turn-up of your trousers. But that's not what networking is. Networking is building long-term, hearts and minds, sustainable relationships. Networking is about being world-class listeners. And here's the problem of the world we live in. People only listen to prepare what they want to say next, rather than to hear what the other person is saying. Networking is about serendipity, how you can make random chance happen in a non-random way by doing certain things, going certain places, hanging around with certain people. Networking is about having strong connections, a small number of strong relationships, and then a wide array of weak connections. Because we live in a world where it's not what you know, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. And networking is about using technology cleverly and smartly. But here's the challenge. You have to do that in high tech you have to use, but with high touch. And you need to put some humanity and to humanize technology. And when you bring all these together and apply them to diasporas become a really formidable force. So my story is I spent 21 years working for a diaspora organization called the Ireland Funds. And the Ireland Funds was started by two exceptional individuals. Have you ever seen a monument to a committee? It's always inspired individuals. A guy called Tony O'Reilly ran the H.J. Heinz Food Company. Dan Rooney, owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers, a football team that won 6 Super Bowls in the United States. And they had an idea, they had a vision, they had a notion that there was such a thing as an Irish empire. An empire not built by military might or force of arms, but just the fact that so many Irish people had emigrated throughout the world. And they asked the question, would these people respond to the ancestral echo, the distant drum of a faraway land, Ireland? They didn't know, and so they had one of these great big black tie fundraising, the great and the good events in Washington, in New York. And the dinner was so unsuccessful, the only reason they had a second dinner a year later was to pay for the first dinner which they had. And yet it went on to extraordinary success. The model was the UJA, the United Jewish Appeal, what the Jewish community in the United States had done to support Israel. Could that be replicated for Ireland? We had a slogan, peace, culture, charity. And actually we decided to change it to look Irish, dress British, think Yiddish. If we could get those combination together, we might get something going. And that's $450 million ago. 1,200 organizations supported throughout the length and breadth of the island of Ireland. The organization now has tens of thousands of people attending hundreds of events in 39 cities around the world. And it's not just the money, it's the fact that people got engaged. And by getting them engaged through the portal of philanthropy, people connected in lots of other different ways, whether it's business or culture or art or sport or education or tourism. So extraordinarily successful. And I got taken aside early in my career with this organization by this guy, and he said, where were you educated? And I said, Ireland. He said, where were you born? I said, Ireland. And he said, well, you're an FBI. And I said, Pat, because that was his name. I said, Pat, what's an FBI? And he said, an FBI is a foreign-born Irishman. Real Irishmen are born in the Bronx. They're born in Chicago. They're born in Boston. And then it hit me. It hit me like a ton of bricks. And this light bulb moment. There's a difference between Ireland and Irishness. There's a difference between the state, which is the physical boundary and the lines on the map, and the nation of Ireland, which is a global notion. And that cop on Fifth Avenue on St. Patrick's Day, who says, I'm Irish, and he's never been in Ireland, and his parents have never been in Ireland. He's part of that global tribe, and we have to engage and involve him. So I believe in such a thing as diaspora capital. Diaspora capital are the resources, the overseas resources available to a country. It's made up of three flows: the flows of people, the flows of finance, and the flows of knowledge. And that every country has this to varying degrees. And this is an emotional business. It's about visions, it's about dreams. And you know, Martin Luther King famously said, "I have a dream." He didn't say, "I have a strategic plan," but to make this business work, you do need both, because diasporas can be difficult. They can be disputatious and diverse and diffuse and distant. There can be tensions, there can be contradictions. My favorite line I heard once from a guy in New York, he said, "I wish I was back in Dublin, wishing I was back in New York." And I think you can see the sort of contradiction there is in that with diaspora capital. So let me tell you about one initiative, because there's now hundreds and hundreds of initiatives in dozens and dozens of countries around the world, but I was involved with it last year. It's called The Gathering, and Ireland decided to invite back the diaspora to visit Ireland last year. They designated it the Year of the Gathering. The government announced it, but couldn't deliver on it themselves. They had to get everybody involved. And every community in Ireland got involved. And there were 5,000 events. And there were all sorts of events: cultural events, and music events, and heritage events, and genealogy events, and sporting events. Everybody grasped this concept. And 300,000 people came back to visit Ireland. It really was an extraordinary occasion. And there's a little secret which I'm going to tell you about this event. And I hope that you don't tell anybody else, because in Ireland we say the definition of a secret is something you tell somebody, only one person at a time. And you know, secrets are I had a call from a friend in London the other day, and he said, "I was told not to repeat this, so I'll only tell you once." And and Dublin, funny enough, was the only city in the world that the Russian KGB closed their office because there were no secrets. So you'll understand how the sort of approach we take to secrets in Ireland. But this gathering was an extremely successful organization, extremely successful venture. So I have to admit and put my hand up that I'm a founder member of an international organization called CASE. And CASE stands for Copy and Steal Everything. And what I do is I go around the world and I see what other countries are doing in this space. And then I see what we could use for other countries. Because here's what's interesting about the diaspora business. It's non-competitive. Somebody who's going to help Palestine or Peru or Poland is not going to help Lithuania or Turkey or Greece. That's just the reality. And so we should share everything. So what does this mean? I think the great challenge is for everybody to go out and to diasporize. And that's about the ugliest word in the English language, which I think I've invented. Because what is TED all about? Well, TED is all about ideas and creativity and talent and innovation. And by definition, that's about people. And diasporas are about people. And people seep and slip and slide from country to country. And so we need to put in place strategies to find out who those people are, where they are, and what they're doing. That's the research capacity. We need to take these people on a journey where they may be distrustful or may dislike us, a journey that brings them to the extent that they're passionately involved with our country. And the glue in all of this is the word that we seem to have lost so much of, which is the word trust. And trust is not an event. You don't meet somebody and they trust you tomorrow. Trust is not deserved. Trust is earned. It can take years to get and be lost in a millisecond. And so you've got to take people in this second stage of cultivation to bring them on that journey. You have to have what we call solicitation, asks and tasks. If you don't ask, nothing will happen. And finally, you need a program of stewardship, which is to convert that initial interest what I referred to earlier, long-term, hearts and minds, sustainable relationships. So the challenge then is to go forth and diasporize. It's for all of us in TED, globally, to embrace this concept, to convince ourselves and to convince our families and convince our companies and convince our organizations and to convince our government and convince our media, our universities, our trade unions, everybody that this is important, that this is an asset that we have as a country, and that if we don't put in place strategies and policies and programs and projects, we're missing a terrific opportunity. And let me leave you with a concept. I believe there's such a thing as a diaspora galaxy. And just imagine the home country is the sun, and all these people around the world are these kind of twinkling stars. And the objective is to network between the sun and the stars and to get them to create, connect, and collaborate as never before. And the glue in all of this is to have some fun in the process. So my final message to you is the definition of a real Irishman is somebody, or woman, is somebody who doesn't go to bed the same day they get up. And I have a feeling that we have a lot of real Irishmen, a lot of real Irish women and Lithuanian men and women here tonight. So, ladies and gentlemen, I finish by saying, go forth and diasporize. At you.